The plane's descent into Savannah was a slow unraveling of time, each dip through the clouds pulling Nora Tate closer to a past she'd left behind. The sky burned with streaks of amber and violet, a sunset that felt like a warning. 8 months in Singapore had hardened her, untangling a maritime fraud case, tracing encrypted transactions through shell companies that hid millions in smuggled cargo. As a forensic data analyst, Nora thrived in the chaos of numbers, finding truth in patterns others overlooked. But now, as the wheels kissed the tarmac, she craved the quiet of the 40 acres her Uncle Henry had left her in coastal Georgia. She pictured the cypress trees leaning over the marshy creek, their roots tangled in the earth like secrets. She'd sketched plans for a cabin in her notebook, a place to escape the relentless pace of her work. In her carry-on, she carried Henry's deed, its edges yellowed but intact, alongside his meticulous files, surveys, tax records, a handwritten map of the property with notes in his precise cursive, "For Nora, my anchor." The airport was a blur of tired travelers and fluorescent lights. Nora's boots clicked against the tile as she moved through baggage claim, her mind already on the land. Henry's death 2 years ago had gutted her. He'd been more than an uncle, a mentor, a mathematician who saw the world as a puzzle. He'd taught her to fish in the creek, to read the stars, to trust data over promises. His will had been clear. The 40 acres were hers, a legacy to protect. She'd been overseas when he passed, unable to attend the funeral, a guilt that gnawed at her still. Now she was ready to honor him, to walk the land and feel his presence in the salt air. The Uber driver, a wiry man named Reggie, hummed a country tune as they left the city behind. "You sure about this address, ma'am?" he asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. His voice carried a hint of unease. "That area's different now." Nora frowned, assuming he meant a new diner or gas station. "It's my uncle's land," she said, her tone clipped. "I haven't been back in a while." Reggie nodded, but his fingers tightened on the wheel. The highway gave way to a smooth, 4-lane road where a gravel path should have been, and Nora's stomach twisted. Streetlights stood in perfect rows, their glow unnatural against the dusk. A massive sign loomed ahead, gold lettering glinting like a predator's eyes. "Welcome to Cypress Hollow, Savannah's premier coastal retreat." Beyond it, sprawling homes with manicured lawns and wraparound porches stretched into the distance, a gated community thriving where Henry's cypress grove once stood. Nora's breath caught, her fingers digging into the leather of her bag. "Stop the car," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Reggie pulled over, and she stepped out, boots sinking into the soft grass of a median. The air smelled of fresh paint and fertilizer, not the briny marsh she remembered. A security guard in a golf cart slowed nearby, his flashlight sweeping over her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but edged with suspicion. Nora clutched the deed, her pulse hammering. "This is my property," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. "I want to know who built this." The guard's eyes narrowed, but he pointed to a sleek building with glass walls at the community's entrance. "Sales office is that way. They'll know more." Her legs moved on autopilot, each step heavier than the last. The land was unrecognizable. Where Henry's Creek had wound through reeds, a man-made lake shimmered, its fountain spraying arcs of water. The cypress grove, where she'd spent summers sketching under Henry's watchful eye, was gone, replaced by rows of identical homes, beige siding, red shutters, each with a mailbox shaped like a lighthouse. A playground stood where his shed once leaned, its swings creaking in the breeze. Nora's chest tightened, a mix of grief and rage. This wasn't just development. It was erasure, a deliberate wiping away of Henry's world. The sales office was a temple of excess. Marble counters, a chandelier dripping crystals, screens looping drone footage of Cypress Hollow's amenities, tennis courts, a clubhouse, a marina. A woman in a tailored blazer, her name tag reading Claire, greeted Nora with a smile that felt like plastic. Welcome to Cypress Hollow. Are you here for our Phase 3 lots? They're 80% sold. Nora's jaw clenched. She slid the deed across the counter, its weight grounding her. I'm here because this is built on my land. I never approved it. Claire's smile flickered, her eyes darting to the document. She scanned it, her fingers hesitating over the paper. Oh, you must be Miss Tate. Mr. Vincent Caldwell, our HOA president, mentioned you might have questions. There's been a misunderstanding about the property transfer. The word misunderstanding landed like a blade. Claire spoke as if Nora had forgotten signing away 40 acres, as if she'd missed the construction of an entire neighborhood. Misunderstanding? Nora repeated, her voice low, dangerous. Claire tapped her tablet, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Caldwell can explain. His office is across the entrance in the admin building. Nora's mind raced, her analyst instincts kicking in. She noted Claire's nervous tick, a slight twitch of her lip, and the way her hands fumbled with the tablet. Something was off, and it wasn't just the development. As she walked through Cypress Hollow, the neighborhood felt like a stage set, too perfect to be real. Streets were named after coastal flora: Magnolia Way, Palmetto Drive, Live Oak Lane. Each home had slight variations, blue shutters here, a dormer there, but they were clones at heart. Security cameras blinked on every corner, their lenses glinting like eyes. Joggers and dog walkers glanced at her, their stares lingering. A woman pushing a stroller whispered to her husband, and Nora caught the word outsider. The irony stung. This was her land, her inheritance, yet she was the stranger. Her thoughts churned, a storm of doubt and determination. Had Henry known this was coming? He'd always been cautious, warning her about developers circling like vultures. Land's power, Nora, he'd said, his voice rough from years of pipe smoke. They'll lie, cheat, and bury you in paper to take it. She dismissed it as paranoia, but now, standing in the shadow of Cypress Hollow's gates, she wondered if she'd failed him. The deed in her bag felt heavier, a tether to his trust. She couldn't let this stand, not for her sake, but for his. The admin building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the last light of dusk. Nora paused, steadying herself. Whoever Vincent Caldwell was, he thought he'd won before she'd even arrived. But he didn't know her. She'd spent years dismantling lies hidden in data, exposing fraudsters who thought they were untouchable. This was no different. It was a puzzle, and she was built to solve it. She pushed open the door, the cold air inside hitting her like a warning. The game had begun, and she was ready to play. The admin building's chill seeped into Nora's bones, the air conditioning dialed to an unnatural frost. The receptionist, a young man with a too-tight tie, led her down a polished hallway lined with framed renderings of Cypress Hollow, gleaming homes, a marina, a future golf course. Each image erased more of Henry's land, replacing his wild marshes with manicured perfection. Nora's boots echoed, her pulse a steady drumbeat. She clutched her bag, the deed inside a silent vow. Vincent Caldwell waited behind a glass door, and she braced herself for the man who'd stolen her legacy. The corner office was a fortress of power, walnut desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the development, a Harvard MBA framed beside a photo of Vincent shaking hands with a senator. He stood as she entered, tall and silver-haired, his navy suit tailored to intimidate. His smile was a blade, sharp and calculated, never touching his eyes. "Nora, so good to finally meet you," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. By the door, voice warm as a hearth. "Please have a seat." He gestured to a leather chair, but Nora remained standing, her stance deliberate. Vincent slid a thick binder across the desk, its cover embossed with the Cypress Hollow logo. "We sent notices to the address on file, your uncle's old place at 478 River Road. No objections were received, so we proceeded per HOA bylaws established in 2001 when Cypress Hollow was zoned." His tone was rehearsed, each word a brick in a wall of legitimacy. The binder held legal notices, certified mail receipts, development plans, all pristine, all damning. But Nora's eyes caught one line, 478, River Road. Henry's home, razed 3 years ago after a fire. Her voice was low, controlled. You sent notices to a demolished address. Vincent shrugged, his nonchalance practiced. It's the owner's responsibility to update contact information. Attempted delivery is sufficient under our agreement. His eyes were too steady, a predator's gaze. Nora recognized it from boardrooms and audits, the look of someone hiding a lie they believed bulletproof. Her mind raced, cataloging his micro-expressions, a slight lip twitch, fingers tapping the desk. He was confident, but not invincible. I'll need to review this with my attorney, she said, closing the binder. Vincent's smile tightened, a crack in his armor. Litigation is costly, Miss Tate. Our firm, Grayson and Pierce, has a reputation for resolving disputes efficiently. The name landed like a threat. Grayson and Pierce were notorious for crushing small claimants with endless motions and fees. He leaned back, satisfied, as if he'd already won. But Nora's work had pitted her against giants, corporations, cartels, men like him. She met his gaze. I'm not afraid of a fight. As she left, a woman lingered near the exit, her gray hair in a messy bun, her eyes darting nervously. She clutched a flyer for a community picnic but whispered as Nora passed, check the HOA minutes from 19. They're not what they seem. Before Nora could respond, the woman hurried away, blending into a group of joggers. Nora's pulse quickened. An ally or a trap? Back at her hotel, she opened her laptop, the binder untouched. Vincent's confidence screamed of a deeper scheme, and that woman's whisper was a thread to pull. She began digging, her fingers flying over the keys, chasing the truth through a maze of data. Nora's hotel room was a cocoon of dim light and humming electronics, her laptop casting a blue glow across the bed. The Cypress Hollow binder sat unopened, its contents a distraction she didn't need. Vincent's performance in the office had been too perfect, his documents too clean. In her world, perfection was a red flag. She pulled up public records, property filings, tax assessments, HOA financials, her mind slipping into the rhythm of analysis. Numbers didn't lie, but people did, and Vincent was hiding something. By midnight, she found it. Vincent James Caldwell Wright. A 2015 ethics violation in Florida, where he'd misrepresented ownership to fast-track a condo sale. The fine was slap on the wrist, but the pattern was clear. Vincent was a repeat offender. She cross-referenced Cypress Hollow's filings, noting irregularities, inflated contractor fees, vague consulting expenses, LLCs with names like Oleander Holdings and Myrtle Ventures. They were shells, designed to obscure money trails. Her gut screamed, this wasn't a one-off. Cypress Hollow was a machine built on stolen land and greased with bribes. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're back. Want the truth about Cypress Hollow? Meet me at Marsh Brew Coffee, 9 a.m. tomorrow. No name, just a challenge. Nora stared at the screen, her mind wrestling with possibilities. It could be the woman from the admin building, or someone closer to Vincent, testing her. She typed, I'll be there, and hit send, her heart pounding. Sleep was a lost cause. She dove back into the HOA minutes from 2019, as the woman had suggested. They were sparse, suspiciously so, generic motions, no debate records, signatures from board members who'd since died or moved. It felt staged, a script to justify the development. Her thoughts churned, doubt creeping in. Had Henry seen this coming? His journals, still in her bag, hinted at his fears, developers circling, pressure to sell. They'll bury you in paper, Nora, he'd warned, his voice rough with pipe smoke. She thought it was old man paranoia, but now she wondered if she'd underestimated him. Guilt gnawed at her, sharp and familiar. She'd missed his funeral, stranded in Singapore when he died. The memory stung, Henry alone, fighting a battle she hadn't known about. She pulled out his map, tracing the creek's curve with her finger. He'd marked a cypress tree with a star, a place they'd spent summers skipping stones. Was that where his secrets waited? She stood, pacing the room. Vincent's smugness replayed in her mind, his assumption that she'd fold. It fueled her, but doubt lingered. What if the law was on his side? Grayson and Pierce could drown her in motions, bleed her dry. Her savings were decent, but not infinite. And what if the residents' families, kids, suffered if she fought? The thought twisted her gut. But Henry's voice echoed, "Fight with facts." She sat back down, pulling up more records, her resolve hardening. The truth was out there, and she'd find it no matter the cost. Marsh Brew Coffee sat on Savannah's fringes, a weathered cafe smelling of roasted beans and low tide. Nora arrived at 8:45 a.m., her eyes scanning the room, locals sipping coffee, a barista wiping counters, the hum of normalcy. She ordered a black coffee and claimed a corner booth with a view of the door. Her laptop was open, a decoy to blend in, but her focus was razor-sharp. The mysterious texter was her first real lead, and she couldn't afford to misjudge them. At 9 a.m., a man entered, mid-40s, in a faded jacket and work boots. His beard was scruffy, his hands calloused, his eyes darting like a hunted animal's. He spotted Nora, hesitated, then approached. "Nora Tate?" he asked, voice low, barely audible over the cafe's chatter. She nodded, gesturing to the seat across from her. He sat, clutching a worn folder, his knuckles white. "I'm Ethan Morrow. Used to survey for Caldwell's company. I know what they did to your land." He slid the folder over, its edges frayed. Inside were soil reports, emails, handwritten notes in tight scrawl. "For years ago, I assessed your property," Ethan said, his voice shaky but resolute. "Sinkholes, flood risks, chemical runoff from an old mill. I flagged it as unsafe for homes. Caldwell buried my report, hired a shady firm to fake clean results. Paid off inspectors, too." His hands trembled, betraying the weight of his words. "Your uncle fought them, filed complaints, hired a lawyer. After he died, they moved fast, forged consents, used dead-end addresses. They knew you were gone." Nora flipped through the documents, her pulse racing. An email from Vincent to an associate read, "Tate's gone. Send notices to River Road and proceed. No one's watching." Another page showed Henry's signature, but it was off, too loopy, unlike his precise cursive. "Why now?" she asked, studying Ethan's face. His jaw tightened, eyes haunted. "They blacklisted me when I questioned the reports. No firm in Georgia would touch me. Saw you at the sales office yesterday. Figured you're Henry's niece, the one he said could take them down." "Henry mentioned me?" Nora's throat tightened, memories of summer evenings by the creek flooding back. Ethan nodded. "Said you were a data wizard, saw through lies. He left something for you, under the cypress by the creek. Said you'd know it." The cypress, Henry's star-marked tree. Her heart clenched. "There's more," Ethan added. "Vincent's partner, Laura Hensley, runs the finances. She's got offshore accounts, fake LLCs. Henry's investigator found proof. It's in the box he buried." Nora's mind spun, hope warring with caution. Ethan seemed genuine, but whistleblowers could be plants. She leaned forward. "Why risk this? You've got a lot to lose." Ethan's gaze dropped. "Lost it already. My wife left when the work dried up. My kid thinks I'm a failure. Henry believed in me, gave me a chance. I owe him." His voice cracked, raw with guilt. Nora softened, recognizing her own burden in his words. "Okay," she said. "We'll check the cypress tonight. But I need everything you've got on Laura." Ethan nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. The game was on, but the stakes were higher than ever. The moon hung low over the marsh, its pale light filtering through the tall grass as Nora and Ethan crept toward the creek's edge. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay, a faint echo of the land Henry loved. Nora's flashlight swept the ground, her heart pounding with each rustle of reeds. The cypress tree, marked with a star on Henry's map, was gone, its stump a ghostly scar in the earth. Ethan carried a shovel, his breath shallow, eyes darting to the shadows. Cypress Hollow's security patrols were close. Nora had seen their golf carts circling earlier, their lights cutting through the dusk. If they were caught, explanations would be hard to sell. "This is it," Nora whispered, kneeling by the stump. The grass was thinner here, the soil soft, as if it remembered the tree's roots. She dug first, the shovel biting into the earth, each scrape amplifying her nerves. Ethan joined in, his movements tense but steady. "Henry said you'd know this spot," he said, voice low. Nora nodded, memories flooding back, summers by the creek, Henry teaching her to skip stones, his laughter warm as the sun. "He called it our sanctuary," she said, her throat tight. The guilt of missing his funeral stabbed at her, sharper now. Had he buried this box knowing she'd come? After 30 minutes, metal clanged against Nora's shovel, a waterproof lockbox, sealed tight. Ethan exhaled, relief mingling with fear. But as Nora reached for it, a distant hum froze them, a golf cart's engine. "Down," Ethan hissed, pulling her behind a clump of reeds. The cart's headlights swept past, pausing yards away. Nora held her breath, her pulse a roar in her ears. The guard's radio crackled, a voice reporting nothing unusual. After an eternity, the cart moved on. Nora's hands shook as she pried open the box. Inside were Henry's journals, audio tapes, a USB drive labeled for Nora, and a note in his cursive. "If you're here, they've made their move. You know how to finish this. Trust Ethan. Fight with facts. Love, Henry." Nora's eyes stung, Henry's words a lifeline and a burden. She tucked the contents into her bag, her mind racing. The journals felt alive, heavy with his voice. The tapes and USB promised answers, but also danger, proof Vincent couldn't ignore. As they covered the hole, Ethan glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded, though her chest ached. "He trusted me. I can't fail him." They slipped back to her car, the night swallowing their tracks. But as they drove away, Nora caught a glint in her rearview mirror, a figure watching from the marsh's edge. Her stomach dropped. They weren't alone. Back at the hotel, Nora locked the door, her paranoia spiking. The figure in the marsh security, or something worse? She set the lockbox contents on the bed, her hands steadying as she opened a journal. Henry's entries were meticulous, detailing Vincent's pressure to sell, veiled threats, and a pattern of targeting elderly owners. One line chilled her. "They'll use the law as a weapon, Nora. But you're sharper." She swallowed, the weight of his faith pressing down. The tapes and USB would have to wait. She needed a secure system to access them. For now, Henry's words were enough to fuel her fight. Nora's hotel room was a war zone of papers and screens, Henry's journals spread across the bed, her laptop humming with open tabs. The lockbox had cracked open Vincent's scheme, but each revelation tightened the knot in her chest. She'd barely slept, her mind churning through Henry's entries, dates, names, deals. He'd tracked Vincent's tactics, invalid addresses, forged consents, bribed officials, with a mathematician's precision. One journal page listed LLC's Oleander Holdings, Myrtle Ventures, Shell's funneling HOA fees to nowhere. Another described a meeting where Vincent laughed about old geezers too dead to fight. The tapes, played on her laptop's secure audio software, captured his voice, smug and threatening. "Sell, Henry, or we'll take it anyway." Her blood boiled, but fear gnawed at her. The figure in the marsh haunted her thoughts. Was Vincent watching? The USB drive was a goldmine. Bank records, emails, photos of forged documents. One email from Vincent to Laura Hensley read, "Tate's overseas. Proceed with notices. She's no threat. Another showed a forged signature, Henry's, but clumsy, a child's imitation of his cursive. Nora cross-referenced the LLCs with public records, tracing funds to offshore accounts and campaign donations. She found 12 other developments in Georgia and South Carolina with the same playbook: rushed approvals, silenced whistleblowers. Cypress Hollow was a cog in a machine, and Vincent was its engineer. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Found something on Laura. Nervous, shredding papers. Meet at Marsh Brew, noon. Nora's pulse quickened. Laura was the key, Vincent's financial puppeteer, but shaky. If she cracked, the machine might stall. But paranoia clawed at Nora. The Marsh figure, the security patrols, were they closing in? She swept her room for bugs, a habit from Singapore, finding nothing but her own fraying nerves. Henry's note replayed in her mind. Fight with facts. She packed her laptop and Henry's files, her resolve hardening. Vincent thought she was a nobody. He'd learn how wrong he was. At Marsh Brew, Ethan looked worse, eyes bloodshot, hands fidgety. Laura spooked, he said, sliding a USB stick across the table. Caught her on my phone, muttering about cleaning up before an audit. She's meeting a councilman tonight. The audio was grainy but damning. Laura's voice, tense, saying, Vincent's covered, but the books aren't ready. Nora's mind raced. This was leverage, but not enough for court. They needed more: Laura's accounts, proof of bribes. Get closer, Nora said. Play the desperate contractor. She'll slip. Ethan hesitated, fear etched in his face. If they catch me. Nora met his gaze. Henry trusted you. So do I. He nodded, but the weight of his past, blacklisting, a broken family, hung between them. Nora felt it too, her own guilt over Henry's death a shadow she couldn't shake. They were both fighting ghosts, but the truth was worth it. Cypress Hollow's perfection masked a growing unease, and Nora felt it in the air as she walked its streets. Residents eyed her, whispers trailing her like smoke. The playground where Henry's shed once stood was busy, but a mother's sharp glance as her child coughed, a wet, persistent sound, caught Nora's attention. She lingered, pretending to check her phone, and overheard the mother muttering to another, "Doctor says it's the air." Something's not right. Nora's heart sank. Henry's soil reports had warned of chemical runoff, toxins seeping into the ground. Were kids getting sick because of Vincent's lies? Back at the hotel, Nora dug into the reports, her analyst brain in overdrive. The data was grim. Heavy metals, volatile compounds, risks of respiratory issues, and worse. Vincent's fake reports had declared the land safe, but Henry's surveys told the truth: sinkholes, contamination, a disaster waiting. Every home was a trap, families living on poisoned soil. Nora's hands clenched, rage mixing with dread. She'd come for justice, but this was bigger: children, futures, lives. The mother's words echoed, and Nora wondered if others were sick, if the community was a ticking bomb. She called Ethan, her voice urgent. Check resident forums, local news. Look for health complaints. Ethan's reply was grim. Already found some. Posts about asthma spikes, rashes. People are scared, but don't know why. Nora's mind flashed to the courtroom battles ahead. If she proved the land was toxic, Vincent's empire would crumble, but so might the lives of innocent residents. The thought twisted her gut. She'd missed Henry's fight. Could she bear failing these families too? That evening, a knock startled her. A note slid under the door and signed, "Hospital records, St. Mary's. Look for pediatric cases." Nora's pulse raced. Another ally, or a setup? She drove to the hospital, posing as a concerned aunt, and charmed a clerk into sharing anonymized data. The numbers were stark: a 30% rise in pediatric respiratory cases near Cypress Hollow over 2 years. Back in her car, Nora gripped the wheel, the weight of it crushing. This wasn't just about land or fraud, it was about harm real and ongoing. She texted Ethan, We need to push harder. The kids are proof. But as she drove away, a black SUV lingered in her mirror. Too close, too steady. Fear spiked, Henry's warning ringing. They'll bury you. She floored the gas, losing the SUV in Savannah's twists. The truth was close, but so was the danger, and Nora felt the walls closing in. Nora adjusted her faded sweater, her notebook clutched like a prop, as she entered Vincent's office for a second meeting. She'd rehearsed the role, overwhelmed air, out of her depth, no threat. Her jeans were creased, her hair loose, a stark contrast to Vincent's tailored suit and slicked silver hair. The admin building's chill hit her again, but she ignored it, focusing on his smirk. "Nora, glad you're back," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Still sorting through the paperwork?" She nodded, forcing a sheepish smile. "It's a lot. I just want to understand the lot sizes, maybe the sewer system." His eyes gleamed, amused, as he launched into a patronizing lecture about infrastructure. Nora scribbled nonsense, doodles, fake questions, watching his guard drop. Her real goal was chaos. She'd spent the morning seeding doubt online, posting anonymized hospital data on resident forums under a burner account. "Why are our kids sick? Check the soil." The posts were gaining traction, comments piling up with stories of asthma, rashes, fear. Now, she needed Vincent to feel the pressure. As he droned on, she interrupted, her tone naive. "Some neighbors mentioned health issues. Could it be the land?" His smile froze, a crack in his facade. "Rumors," he said, waving a hand. "We've passed every inspection." But his fingers tapped the desk, a tell she'd seen before. He was rattled. She left the office, catching a glimpse of the gray-haired woman from earlier, now handing out picnic flyers near the clubhouse. Their eyes met, a silent nod passing between them. Nora's phone buzzed as she walked. Ethan, texting, "Laura's meeting the councilman tonight." "I'm tailing her." Nora's chest tightened. Ethan's audio had been vague, but a direct bribe could nail Laura. She replied, "Be careful. We're being watched." The black SUV from the hospital lingered in her memory, a shadow she couldn't shake. Vincent's reach was long, and her window was narrowing. That evening, Nora joined a resident meetup at the playground, posing as a curious newcomer. The mother from before, Sarah, was there, her son's cough worse. "It's not just him," Sarah said, voice low. "Other kids too. I found your post online." Nora's heart raced. Her burner account had reached her. "I'm looking into it," Nora whispered. "Spread the word," quietly. Sarah nodded, fear and hope in her eyes. Nora felt the weight of her trust, a mirror of Henry's. She couldn't fail them. But as she left, a security camera swiveled, its lens locking on her. Vincent was watching, and she was running out of moves. Ethan's hands shook as he adjusted the tiny recorder hidden in his jacket, his breath uneven. He'd infiltrated Laura Hensley's orbit, posing as a desperate contractor needing work. The plan was simple but brutal. Get close, push her to talk, record everything. Laura's office, a sleek annex to the admin building, smelled of lavender and deceit. She was mid-40s, sharp-eyed, her blonde bob immaculate, but her nails bitten raw, a sign of nerves Nora had flagged. Ethan leaned into his role, voice rough. "Heard rumors about the land, Ms. Hensley. Legal trouble. I just need a gig, not drama." Laura's gaze flickered, assessing him. "Rumors are noise," she said, but her voice wavered. "Stick with us, and you'll work." He pressed, casual but pointed. "Folks say the books don't add up. I don't want to get burned." Laura's lips tightened, and she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "The books are fine. Vincent's got friends, counsel, inspectors. We're covered." Ethan's recorder caught every word, his pulse hammering. She was slipping, but not enough. He risked more. "Saw you shredding papers. That about the audit." Laura froze, her eyes narrowing. "You ask a lot for a nobody." Panic spiked. He'd pushed too far. But she softened, desperate. Keep quiet, and there's a bonus. Big one. He nodded, playing along, but his gut churned. If she checked his story, he was done. That night, Ethan tailed Laura to a dimly lit bar where she met a councilman, a paunchy man with a gold watch. Hidden in a booth, Ethan recorded her passing an envelope, her voice clear. Vincent needs the zoning vote. This covers it. The councilman pocketed it, nodding. Ethan's hands sweated, the audio pure gold. But as he slipped out, a man in a black cap watched him, too close. Ethan ducked into an alley, heart pounding, and texted Nora, "Got it. But I'm burned." Nora's reply was instant. "Get to the hotel." Now, at the hotel, Nora played the audio, her jaw tight. Laura's bribe was damning, but the man in the cap meant Vincent was closing in. Ethan looked wrecked, his face pale. "My kid's with my ex," he said, voice breaking. "If they come for me," Nora gripped his shoulder. "They won't. We're ending this." But doubt gnawed at her. The SUV, the cameras, the councilman's ease, Vincent's network was vast, and her evidence, though strong, might not be enough. Henry's note echoed, "Fight with facts." She opened her laptop, merging Ethan's audio with Henry's files, building a case that could topple an empire. But the cost, Ethan's safety, the residents' trust, her own freedom, loomed larger with every click. The HOA meeting filled Cypress Hollow's clubhouse, a gaudy space with chandeliers and marble counters. Nora sat among 50 residents, her notebook a prop, her eyes on Vincent at the podium. He radiated control, listing budgets and new rules, his smile a mask. But the room buzzed with tension. Sarah and others clutched phones, whispering about Nora's forum posts. The hospital data had spread, fueling anger. When Vincent opened the floor, Nora stood, her voice calm but sharp. "Can you clarify how the land was acquired? Notices went to my uncle's raised address, and I've found forged consents." The room shifted, murmurs rising. Vincent's smile held, but his jaw twitched. "All legal, Miss Tate. We have records." Nora pressed, her tone innocent. "What about the soil? Surveys show toxins, kids are sick." Was that disclosed? Sarah stood, voice shaking. "My son's in the hospital." "Is this true?" Others joined, shouting questions. A man waved a phone, citing Nora's posts. Vincent raised his hands, urging calm. "These are baseless claims. Inspections cleared us." But his voice cracked, and Nora saw it, the mask slipping. She pushed harder. "I have records of bribes to inspectors, fake reports. If others got invalid notices, this whole development's fraudulent." The crowd erupted, some yelling, others filming. Sarah demanded, "Show us the consents." Vincent's lawyer, a Grayson and Pierce suit, stepped in, calling for order, but the damage was done. Residents stormed out, vowing to check their own papers. Nora caught Sarah's eye, a silent thank you passing between them. But Vincent's glare burned into her, a promise of retaliation. She'd cracked his facade, but the war was far from one. That night, Ethan arrived, shaken. "Laura knows I'm with you," he said. "Got a call, anonymous. Said to back off or my kid pays." Nora's blood ran cold. Vincent was escalating, targeting Ethan's family. She contacted her DOJ friend, arranging a sting for Laura's next bribe. "We'll protect your son," she promised, though fear gnawed at her. The residents' rebellion was her weapon, but Vincent's reach, cameras, SUVs, councilmen, felt suffocating. Henry's voice urged her on, "You're sharper." She compiled the audio, hospital data, and Henry's files, her hands steady. The courtroom loomed, but first, she had to survive Vincent's next move. Nora's hotel room was a war room, strewn with Henry's journals, Ethan's recordings, and hospital data printouts. The sting operation loomed, a high-stakes gamble to catch Laura Hensley in a bribe. Agent Ramirez, Nora's DOJ contact from a past cybercrime case, had orchestrated it. Ethan, wired and fraying, would meet Laura in a downtown parking lot, baiting her to offer cash for his silence. Nora sat in a surveillance van, her laptop open to a live feed from Ethan's wire, her heart pounding like a war drum. The black SUV tailing her, the man in the cap at the bar, Vincent's icy glare at the HOA meeting, they swirled in her mind, each a reminder of the tightening noose. Ethan's son was under protective watch after the anonymous threat, "Back off, or he pays," but Nora's guilt over Henry's death bled into fear for Ethan. She'd dragged him into this, and the cost was mounting. Ethan stood in the lot, his jacket bulky with the recorder, his breath visible in the cool night air. Laura's silver Lexus pulled up, her face pale under the streetlights. She clutched a briefcase, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. "You said you'd stay quiet," she hissed, voice low. Ethan played his role, voice rough but steady. "I need guarantees. $500,000's a start, but who's calling the shots?" Laura hesitated, her nails digging into the briefcase. "Vincent. He says Tate's a nobody, that she'll fold. Take this and disappear." She opened the case, revealing stacks of cash. Nora's jaw clenched. Vincent's arrogance was her weapon. Ethan leaned in, feigning greed. "Vincent's idea or yours?" Laura's voice cracked. "His. He's got the council, the inspectors. We're untouchable." Ramirez's team moved like lightning, badges flashing, cuffs snapping on Laura's wrists. She screamed, the briefcase hitting the pavement, cash spilling like confetti. "You're dead if you cross him," she spat as agents hauled her away. Nora exhaled, her hands trembling, but triumph felt fragile. Laura's arrest was a blow, but Vincent was a ghost, insulated by layers of corruption. Ramirez climbed into the van, his face grim. "She's talking, but Vincent's clean on paper. We need his direct link, tapes, emails, something undeniable." Nora handed over her compiled evidence, Henry's recordings, forged consents, LLC transactions. "This ties him to the scheme," she said, her voice steady despite the dread pooling in her gut. "But we need to move fast. He knows I'm close." Back at the hotel, Ethan collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. "They threatened my kid, Nora. My ex is freaking out." His voice broke, raw with fear and guilt. Nora knelt beside him, her own regrets, missing Henry's funeral, failing to see his fight, mirroring his. "We'll protect him," she promised, though doubt gnawed at her. Vincent's network was vast, and Laura's warning echoed, "You don't know who you're messing with." Nora opened her laptop, merging Ethan's new audio with Henry's files. A sub-event complicated things. Sarah, the resident mother, had texted, frantic, her son's condition had worsened, and other parents were reporting similar symptoms. The hospital data Nora leaked was spreading, fueling resident outrage, but it also meant Vincent might escalate. She texted Sarah, "Keep pushing. We're close." But as she hit send, a noise outside, a car idling too long, sent her to the window. The black SUV was back, its driver a shadow. Fear spiked, Henry's note burning in her mind. Fight with facts. The trap had sprung, but Vincent was still free, and Nora felt the walls closing in. The Savannah courthouse buzzed with nervous energy, its marble halls echoing with footsteps and whispers. Nora sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands steady but her heart racing. Across the room, Vincent Caldwell stood impeccable in a charcoal suit, his silver hair gleaming, his smile a mask of confidence. But Nora saw the cracks, his fingers twitching, his eyes darting to the gallery, where residents like Sarah sat, their faces a mix of hope and fury. The judge, a stern woman with gray curls and a reputation for cutting through nonsense, reviewed the case file, her expression unreadable. Today's hearing was about one thing, the legality of Cypress Hollow's development, and whether Nora's land was stolen. Vincent's lawyer, a Grayson and Pierce veteran named Paul Hargrove, opened with a polished deflection. "This is a tragic misunderstanding," he said, his voice smooth as silk. Mr. Caldwell acted in good faith, relying on certified notices and professional assessments. Any errors were clerical, not malicious. He painted Vincent as a victim of bureaucracy, downplaying the forged consents and toxic soil. Nora let him talk, her analyst brain cataloging his lies. Hargrove was setting a trap, banking on the judge's impatience with complex cases. She wouldn't fall for it. When her turn came, Nora stood, her voice clear, grounded by Henry's note in her pocket. She began with her story, raw and human, returning from Singapore, expecting Henry's marsh, finding a gated empire instead. "I trusted my uncle's deed," she said, holding it up, its yellowed edges a testament to his care. But notices went to a raised address, and consents were forged. She walked the court through the evidence, step by step, Henry's journals detailing Vincent's threats, tapes of him mocking geezers too dead to fight, emails proving he knew the land was Nora's. The gallery gasped as she played a recording, Vincent's voice cold. "Tate's gone." "Proceed." Hargrove objected, calling it prejudicial, but the judge overruled, her eyes narrowing. Nora's trump card was the soil reports. "These homes sit on contaminated land," she said, projecting Henry's surveys. "Sinkholes, chemical runoff, risks to children." Vincent bribed inspectors to fake clean results. Sarah's sob from the gallery punctuated her words, and the judge leaned forward, engrossed. Nora revealed the LLC's Oleander Holdings, Myrtle Ventures, tracing funds from HOA fees to offshore accounts and campaign bribes. An email, accidentally sent by Laura, confirmed payments to a councilman for zoning votes. The courtroom shifted, residents whispering, reporters scribbling. Vincent's smile faltered, his fingers gripping the table. Hargrove countered, dismissing the evidence as circumstantial, but Nora saw the judge's skepticism. She closed with a plea. "This isn't just my land. It's about families, kids, a community built on lies." The judge called a recess, her face unreadable. Outside, chaos erupted. Residents confronted Vincent, Sarah leading the charge, her voice raw. "You poisoned my son." Security intervened, but Vincent's composure cracked, his eyes wild. Nora met his gaze, unflinching. She'd exposed his lies, but the battle wasn't over. Back in her hotel, she prepared for the next hearing, haunted by a new fear. Vincent's desperation could turn deadly, and she was his prime target. The second hearing was a powder keg, the courtroom packed with residents, reporters, and a palpable sense of reckoning. Nora sat, her evidence organized, Henry's note a talisman in her pocket. Vincent arrived with an army of lawyers, his face a mask of defiance, but his hands betrayed him, trembling as he adjusted his tie. The judge wasted no time, her voice sharp. "Ms. Tate's evidence raises serious concerns. Mr. Caldwell, your response." Hargrove spun a tale of due diligence, blaming Laura Hensley for any oversights, but the judge's eyes narrowed, unconvinced. Nora stood, her voice steady despite the weight of every eye on her. She presented new evidence, Laura's recorded bribe, bank records tying Vincent to shell companies, and a deposition from a whistleblower inspector admitting to falsified reports. The gallery buzzed as she projected a soil report, its data stark, heavy metals, volatile compounds, a 30% rise in pediatric illnesses. "Vincent knew," she said, her voice rising. "He built on poison, endangering families." Sarah's tears were audible, and other residents nodded, their anger a rising tide. Hargrove objected, but the judge silenced him, engrossed. Then came the bombshell. Nora's lawyer, a pro bono ally named Elena Ruiz, uncovered a clause in Henry's deed, buried in fine print. If structures were built under false pretenses, the land and all assets reverted to the heir Nora. Gasps rippled through the room. "I own Cypress Hollow," Nora said, her voice unwavering. "Every home, every road, every lie." Vincent's face drained of color, his lawyer scrambling. Hargrove argued it would ruin residents, but Nora countered, "Vincent endangered them, not me. Justice demands accountability." The judge's gavel fell, her ruling seismic. The development was fraudulent, unsold homes frozen, the HOA's finances under federal audit. Most crucially, the land was Nora's, legally and irrevocably. Outside, the media swarmed, headlines flashing, Cypress Hollow built on stolen land. Residents mobbed Vincent, demanding answers, while Sarah hugged Nora, sobbing, "You saved us." But Nora's triumph was tempered by fear. Vincent's glare as he left the courtroom was a promise of vengeance, and the black SUV had reappeared outside her hotel. That night, Elena uncovered another clause. Any profits from illegal structures were Nora's, potentially millions. The power was dizzying, but Henry's voice grounded her. Fight for truth, not greed. She met with Ethan, his relief palpable but shadowed by his son's safety. "What now?" he asked. Nora's eyes hardened. "We finish it." Vincent's down, but not out. The courtroom had been her battlefield, but the war was far from won. The aftermath of the ruling was a storm, Savannah's air thick with media frenzy and resident outrage. Nora walked through Cypress Hollow, the streets alive with reporters, protesters, and residents clutching flyers, demanding answers. Headlines screamed, "Stolen land, poisoned homes." 3 officials resigned, a councilman, a zoning commissioner, and a planning director, each tied to Vincent's bribes. The mayor launched an ethics probe, his press conference a desperate bid to distance himself. Nora's inbox overflowed with messages, residents seeking help, lawyers offering deals, strangers inspired by her fight. But the black SUV's shadow lingered, and Vincent's silence was deafening. He'd vanished after the hearing, his lawyers stonewalling, and Nora's gut screamed he was plotting. She met Sarah and other residents in the clubhouse, now stripped of its chandeliers, a symbol of Vincent's excess. Sarah's son was stable but weak, his illness a rallying cry. "What happens to us?" Sarah asked, her voice raw. Nora's heart ached. She owned the homes, but eviction wasn't her goal. "I'll sell them back at cost," she said, her voice firm. "No penalties. Damages will fund a trust, clean water, soil remediation, a clinic." Residents nodded, some crying, others gripping her hand. But doubt gnawed at her. Could she protect them if Vincent retaliated? His network, politicians, enforcers, was wounded, but not dead. Ethan joined, his face lighter since his son's safety was secured. "Laura's spilling everything," he said. "Bank accounts, bribes, even Vincent's offshore stashes." Her testimony, paired with Nora's evidence, had triggered FBI indictments. Vincent was named, but he'd fled, rumored to be in Miami. Nora's fear spiked. He wasn't the type to surrender. That night, a new subplot emerged. The gray-haired woman, Ellen, revealed herself as a former HOA treasurer who'd kept secret records of Vincent's kickbacks. Her files, hidden in a safe deposit box, detailed payments to a state senator, sealing Vincent's fate. "Henry trusted me," Ellen said, her eyes weary. "I failed him, but not you." Nora hugged her, their shared guilt a bond. The trust took shape, the Tate Community Trust, funded by court damages, prioritized health and environmental fixes. Nora appointed a resident-led HOA board, with Sarah as chair and Ethan as compliance officer. But as she signed the papers, a call from Ramirez chilled her. Vincent had been spotted in Savannah, meeting a known fixer. "Stay sharp," Ramirez warned. Nora locked her hotel door, Henry's note her anchor, "You're sharper." The fallout was reshaping Cypress Hollow, but Vincent's shadow loomed, and Nora braced for his final move. Vincent's trial was a spectacle, the courthouse steps lined with cameras and residents, their signs reading justice for Cypress Hollow. Nora sat in the gallery, her hands steady, Henry's note folded in her pocket. Vincent, caught in a Miami sting, stood in cuffs, his silver hair disheveled, his arrogance gone. The prosecution leaned on Nora's evidence, tapes, emails, Ellen's files, Laura's testimony. He was sentenced to 22 years for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy, no parole. Laura took a plea, serving 8. The senator and 2 officials faced indictments. One fled to Belize. The machine was dismantled, but Nora felt no joy, only quiet resolve. Henry's fight was done. She walked Cypress Hollow streets, now softer, lived in. Kids biked, neighbors waved, the playground busy despite the lingering fear of toxins. The Tate Community Trust was active, funding soil cleanup and a clinic, with Sarah overseeing aid for families. The new HOA, transparent and resident-run, met in a modest community center, the clubhouse sold to offset costs. Nora had stepped back, her role as owner complete. She'd kept none of the profits, channeling them to the trust, honoring Henry's legacy over greed. A year later, the Tate Amendment passed, mandating verified consent for HOA actions and third-party oversight for developments. Nora spoke at a legal conference, not as a lawyer, but as a woman who'd exposed corruption. Truth needs a push, she said, her voice steady, and people brave enough to ask questions. The crowd applauded, but her thoughts were on Henry, Sarah, Ethan, Ellen, those who'd fought beside her. Cypress Hollow was no cautionary tale. It was a community reborn, sealed by those who refused to look away. At the creek's edge, where Henry's cypress once stood, a memorial garden bloomed, its plaque gleaming. For those who fight for truth, this land endures. Nora stood there, reading Henry's note one last time. Make sure it ends the right way. It had. The marsh was healing, the soil stabilizing, the residents thriving. Henry's legacy wasn't just the land, it was the courage to question, to dig, to stand. Vincent had thought she'd fold, but Nora was built for the maze, trained by a man who saw her fire. The trap wasn't his. It was theirs, and its echo shook the ground beneath every lie, leaving a garden, a community, and a truth that would never fade.